Most people think financial mistakes are about not knowing enough, but the truth is more uncomfortable than that. The biggest money mistakes aren't made out of ignorance. They're made at very specific moments in life, moments when everything feels certain or exciting or urgent. And by the time most people realize what happened, years have already passed. Today, we're going to walk through the most damaging financial mistake people make at every stage of life, from their 20s all the way into retirement. Some of these will feel obvious in hindsight. Others might describe exactly where you are right now. Let's get into it. Most people in their 20s treat time like it's free. At 22, retirement feels like someone else's problem. There are student loans to deal with, rent to figure out, and a social life that seems to cost more every year. So investing gets pushed to later. Here's why that's so costly. If you invest $300 a month starting at 22 and you earn a modest 8% annual return, you'll have roughly $1.4 million by the time you're 65. Wait until you're 32 to start the exact same habit, and that number drops to around $610,000. Same discipline, same monthly amount. A 10-year delay cost you almost $800,000. This isn't a lecture about skipping coffee. It's about understanding that in your 20s, time is your most valuable financial asset, and most people spend it without thinking. The fix isn't complicated. Even $100 a month into an index fund at 22 puts you miles ahead of where you'd be starting at 30. The biggest mistake in your 30s is letting lifestyle keep pace with income. This decade is when careers start accelerating, salaries go up, and almost automatically, so does spending. Bigger apartment, nicer car, more travel, better restaurants. Economists call it lifestyle inflation. Your brain just calls it, "I've earned this." The problem isn't enjoying your money. The problem is when every raise gets absorbed immediately into a higher monthly cost of living, leaving your savings rate exactly where it was at 24. A lot of people enter their 40s earning twice what they made in their 20s and somehow still living paycheck to paycheck. Not because they're irresponsible, but because their expenses grew just as fast as their income. The fix is a simple rule. Every time your income goes up, save at least half of the increase before it touches your lifestyle. You still get to enjoy the raise. You just don't let all of it disappear. The biggest mistake in your 40s is taking on too much risk to make up for lost time. This is the decade where financial anxiety tends to peak. People start doing the retirement math, realize they're behind, and panic. And panic leads to bad decisions. Suddenly, conservative investors are putting money into volatile stocks, crypto, or opportunities that promise high returns fast. Sometimes it works. More often, it accelerates the problem. There's also a subtler version of this mistake, neglecting an emergency fund because every spare dollar is being thrown at retirement accounts. Then one medical bill or job loss sends everything off course. The 40s require a calm, boring strategy more than any other decade. Max out your 401k and IRA. Keep 3 to 6 months of expenses liquid. Ignore the noise. The people who recover best from a late start aren't the ones who took big swings. They're the ones who got consistent and stayed that way. The biggest mistake in your 50s is underestimating healthcare costs in retirement. Most people plan for housing, food, and travel. Very few plan for the reality of what healthcare costs once you're no longer covered by an employer. Studies consistently show that the average couple retiring at 65 will need somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 just to cover healthcare expenses through retirement, not including long-term care. That's a number most retirement calculators don't automatically include. The fix in your 50s is to specifically account for this. Look into health savings accounts if you're eligible. Contributions are tax-deductible, growth is tax-free, and withdrawals for medical expenses are also tax-free. It's one of the most efficient savings vehicles that exists. Also spend time understanding Medicare, what it covers, what it doesn't, and what supplemental coverage you'll likely need. The people who get blindsided by healthcare costs in retirement are almost always the ones who didn't look at this until it was too late. The biggest mistake in your 60s is claiming Social Security too early. You can start collecting at 62. And for many people, that's exactly what they do because the money is available and retirement feels overdue. But claiming at 62 versus waiting until 70 can mean a difference of 70 to 75% in your monthly benefit. For someone whose full benefit at 67 would be $2,000 a month, claiming at 62 drops that to around $1,400. Waiting until 70 raises it to roughly $2,480. Over a 20-year retirement, that gap adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. The math doesn't always favor waiting. It depends on your health, your other income sources, and your specific situation. But the decision should be made deliberately with a clear understanding of the numbers. Most people make it impulsively simply because the option is there. Every one of these mistakes has something in common. None of them feel like mistakes when they're happening. Spending your raise feels like enjoying life. Claiming Social Security early feels like finally getting what you're owed. Avoiding investing in your 20s feels like being realistic. The gap between good and poor financial outcomes usually isn't knowledge, it's awareness. Catching yourself at the moment the decision is actually being made. If any of these hit close to home, the best time to adjust is always right now. If you found this useful, there's a lot more where this came from. Subscribe and we'll keep breaking down the financial patterns most people never see coming.